in Canada, maybe I can get 200K Canadian for 10%, or I can get a $1 million in the United States USD. Which one will I pick? Like, that's not something that, hey, I'm a Canadian, I should be settled for Canadian funds. No, that's not the mentality you should have for your business.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Not a Minimum Viable podcast. Today, we're joined by Anderson Yang, a supply chain founder who went from knowing nothing about the industry to building one of Canada's largest student communities in the space. He's a Dean's List scholar from Rotman Commerce who traded corporate comfort for startup chaos, going from a brief stint in Silicon Valley to building SteraFlow, which we'll hear about more, an AI powered procurement platform that he's tackling the messy world of supplier communications with. Anderson's on a mission to help sourcing teams by building a tool he wishes he had and ensuring that the AI works by building it for the people who use it. Welcome, Anderson.
Thanks, fine. Thanks, Rudy. Thanks so much for inviting me here.
So Anderson, why don't we start with the problem that you're working on right now? Could you give us a concise overview of what SteraFlow is and the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, definitely. So fundamentally, what SteraFlow is trying to do is solve communication for supply chain teams, specifically for procurement teams. As a supply chain manager and previous sourcing manager myself, I was working at a Silicon Valley startup called Verkada, and I was a global sourcing intern there. So I was dealing with a lot of documents that could help the team to launch their new product essentially. So I have to talk to people in Taiwan, people in China to figure out packaging and just the build of the product. And a lot of times it's a lot of back and forth, right? And let's say you're sourcing a particular item from three different vendors and you're comparing the prices, comparing the tech specs. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of standardization that needs to be made before you can make a decision, right? And that process would take around 80% of the time of these procurement managers. And I realized like, why can't they shift their time to do something that's more impactful? Like for example, negotiating vendors or looking into the like supplier a little bit more to understand their financial background and things like that, so that they can make a more justified decision before they really engage with them, right? And so that's why we built SteraFlow. So essentially, SteraFlow is an AI-powered procurement platform that helps sourcing teams to source faster by doing streamlining vendor communication and consolidating documents, essentially.
So where does AI come into this thing? Is it acting as a co-pilot to help these suppliers go through these, I guess, like tasks that require a lot of mental effort?
Yeah, definitely. So where AI is playing to this is, let's say you get three different documents from three different vendors that have three different formatting that is, on Excel or on a spreadsheet or on the PDFs, right? How can you consolidate that into like a clean, standardized, searchable format that can be referred in the future? That's where parsing could come in. And let's say if they want to really initiate this particular deal with the company or with the supplier, they will have to draft the documents, right? What if I have all the context of the business, all the context of these documents? My AI is have the capability to understand with the knowledge base from these particular various inputs of information, part it into a way so that I can request for a quote in a more effective manner. I can capture all the necessary nuances. Let's say Incoterms. Incoterms is like a standardized like shipping responsibility distribution like framework, and maybe it's like lead time, like how much does it take for my product to come or things like that, right? Like how can I understand all these contexts with my internal databases, with my previous product launches? How can I make sure that things go smooth? Like how can I request a quote most effectively? How can I draft emails more effectively? And that's essentially boosting the capability of supply chain managers to have better communication.
And you mentioned something called Incoterms, which reminded me of a conversation we had, I think it was last summer, when I was doing some research for a work project, and you gave me a brief on basically what the supply chain industry's analytics side looks like. And I'm curious because I was going through your LinkedIn and I saw somewhere you talking about how you didn't know much about the industry in the beginning, and a YouTube video made you very interested in it all of a sudden. I'm curious to hear about that journey as well, going from that like little spark to now you're building a company in the space. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, exactly. So before I joined Rodman, I always thought that I'm a marketing guy. And
Hmm.
so I joined in. I joined the largest marketing community, RCMA, Ramen Commerce Marketing Association at UofT, and somehow I just like look at this video because I always have a passion in tech too. And but most of the time at Rodman, my courses are related to finance, accounting, marketing, not a lot of things about tech, to be honest. And I was looking at this video, and this guy, his name is Jerry. I still talk to him. He's probably one of my best mentors. He was talking about like, hey, how he shifted from marketing to supply chain role. And initially, I don't really know what is supply chain role. I just be like, hey, okay, I buy stuff, sell stuff. That's it, right? And so I really look at this video. Like, he really highlighted the core aspect of supply chain, which is the qualitative and the quantitative part of this particular role. So it got very fascinating for me. And because like when it comes to like the qualitative aspect, right? Supply chain is all about talking to people. How can I find the right vendors? How can I schedule the best sourcing schedule, etc. Right? That's a lot of like negotiation and things like that. So that's the I would say like the soft skills that really comes into play. And for the technical part, it's like there's a lot of calculations. If you have taken any operations management classes, you know about new spender models, you know about multimodal or like multi-echelon. Can't remember the exact terms, but there's a lot of models that helps companies to identify what's the best supply chain strategy they should go for. And that's just like I'm personally very in touch with Professor Vahid Roshani, and he's like expert in this field. So, I just learned a lot from them. And from there, I just feel like, hey, maybe UofT can have something that is, in this particular space because this is not a very common topic. It's not really like when people know about supply chain, they know exactly what it is, right? So I just like, hey, maybe I can start a community around that. We can talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, I'm interested in this pivot as well because you talked about how like traditionally a lot of the courses we do in Rotten Commerce are not maybe centered around tech or don't have enough exposure towards that. But then you talk about how you found mentors through that time there as well, like Professor Roshane that you mentioned, as well as Jerry you were talking about. How did you go about deciding that you wanted to reach out to these people and there could be something of value to gain from them, and then maintaining that relationship afterwards?
I didn't really think much at that time. I just felt like, hey, this is something interesting. I want to hear from someone that have experienced something before I really decide if I want to pursue this or not, right? And I think having that interest really, like personally, I think myself as a person who like to do something, like execute first, then think, right? Because a lot of times we think a lot of stuff and things can get complicated and it is like, hey, like this seems too complicated. I don't want to work anymore. So like my approach is like, hey, I do something and I see if I really like it or not. And usually when you start something, then you'll start to like it, right? Like I'm assuming like for this podcast, you have so much passion, but like when you start recording, it becomes hard. But eventually, you kind of get a hang of it, and you understand like what's the best flow for you guys, right? And that's when the fun parts come in, right? So for me, I just decided to reach out to these guys and really just like take in what they're trying to say. I don't have any judgment. I just like be like, hey, what are some parts that's interesting or something I should be aware of? And from there, I kind of want to branch out. And personally, I don't have that particular background, right? But I want to foster like a community where people can have interest in this field. And so I started a club, supply chain management group, to invite people. The reason why I didn't make it a Rotman Club in particular is because I think supply chain is such a big topic where you need engineering, you need the comm site guys, you need the business guys, right? You need all the different type of talents from different fields. And so like I try to make it into like a more UofT club instead of ramen club in particular. And by the time when I left, like we have 30 executive members. In general, we have 500 participants that came to our events. And it just like it was a really great experience for me. So I'd say for those who have some interest in something, just do it. Just like if you think something is particularly interesting, even though it may be out of your reach from your your ability standpoint, you can still reach out to them because like these people, they love to help students, like especially those who are motivated to do things.
Yeah, this bias for action that you've mentioned, I feel like is a good signal for entrepreneurs to have in general. So coming from Taiwan, which I believe you've described as being the heart of the global tech supply chain, uh, I'm curious to know how that has influenced, how that cultural background has influenced your perspective on the challenges within supply chain itself. Do you have any like particularly unique insights that have been derived as a result of your personal experiences being in Taiwan?
Yeah, definitely. Like personally, I'd say my grandmother from my dad's side, she was a successful entrepreneur. She was in the electronic manufacturing space, and she had been like a great influence. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was like in third grade. And so, but her influence in my family is huge. And sometimes I just think that, hey, if I could contribute it to like this community or this family for a little bit with my own capability, even though the business is not here anymore, like I still want to do something about it, right? And in Taiwan, it's TSMC, Foxconn, all the big manufacturing companies are here in Taiwan. So it just makes sense where, hey, like we are directly connected to the Silicon Valley. Like we are always in touch, right? Like whenever there's like a new chip coming out from NVIDIA, TSMC will be the guy to manufacture them. And if there's any new iPhone, new models, right, it'll be produced by Foxconn. So I feel like that particular link is so strong, it's within my blood, I'd say. And so I guess that cultural background drives me to want to further pursue this space. And supply chain management seems to be something that really matches not only from my cultural background, but also for just my interest in general, right? And even my personal background too. It's like, hey, like people are producing things in Taiwan, and all the talents, like manufacturing talents, all the engineering talents are also here in Taiwan too. And so why don't I leverage something that's part of me, right?
And I'm interested to know. So you mentioned your grandma was an entrepreneur. How has that changed how you think about risk, especially given like you've achieved academic honors in school, you've had the chance to go into corporate. Given all that, how are you perceiving risk?
For me to perceive risk, I personally I consider myself to be a little bit risk averse. Although people think I'm risk taking, I still think there's some part of me that wants stability and just security in general, right? So in terms of risk, I really think it's a numbers game. Whatever you're doing, it's a numbers game. If you can get a job, you didn't apply enough. If you can't get your first client, you haven't reached out enough. I think that's it. And by reaching out to people, like I personally think network is like the biggest leverage everyone could have. It's like for example, when I was in Silicon Valley, I went to this company Verkada, right? How I got this job was I looked at Sequoia Capital, like one of the largest VC, and they have a job posting board. I was like, hey, are there some jobs that I can look into? And I found Verkada. It's like supply chain role. Great, I love it. It fits my criteria that I'm looking for. I reach out to the managers at Verkada directly through LinkedIn. That's it. And Elsa, she was there. She was the manager of supply chain, and she responded to me and to be like, "Hey, like, do you want to have a quick chat?" And I had a quick chat. And from there, she forwarded my resume to the HR people, and HR people reach out to me, and then I go through the entire interview process. And that is after my experience at Nestle. And that process only took me like 2 months, and I got the job. And so, like, of course, you need to have something that's within your history to be like, hey, you have a good proven academic history, you have taken the related classes. I feel like network is something that's like cherry on top, right? Like if you don't have that, that doesn't make you stand out, especially in this like competitive environment where people are getting A pluses everywhere. People are 4.0 GPAs, and how can you really stand out? Just through people, connect with people, fundamentally on the people side of things. Don't try to like suck up on people too, because they could see. And so if you generally uh, like interest in them and what they do, like they're more willing to share. So at this point, I think risk for me, as long as it doesn't affect my well-being and just financially and anything, like there's not much risk, right? And I was reading this book called oh, it's actually right here. It's called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Wait,
Like
there's
he
no
gave
way
a
because I'm literally reading this book right now as well.
oh no way. It's such a great book. I'm telling you, everyone should read it. It's such a short read, but it's like it's insane. I love this book. Anyways, like there's a thing that really there's like different pillars of like leverage, right? You have the labor leverage, which is like the least effective. You have money, and you have people, and you also have content creating and engineering, right? And so like pretty much what it's saying is try to find the leverage where it's like a minimum marginal cost but can have like unlimited upside, which I think just reaching out to people on LinkedIn does that. Like how long does it take for you to send out LinkedIn messages? Okay, you have to think about it, maybe 5 minutes at max, right? And so like that for me, it just felt like, hey, it's actually riskless, but it's like a call option where you have unlimited upside, right? Like why don't I do it? Pretty much that's it. Yeah, that's how I perceive risk.
Wait, I like how you reframed the risk in the situation as well. And coming from a similar background to yours in terms of UofT and Rotman, I think our program gives us a fair bit of opportunity to, go out there and network, or at least learn how to network. And for me, it took me the first 2 years to even start taking advantage of any of the opportunities that were available to us, because in my head I thought, if I have merit, opportunities will just come and find me. But that's not the case when you're surrounded by people who have that merit, right? You have to take the initiative, put yourself out there. So, in that sense, how important was it for you to build that skill? And how important do you think it is for not just founders, but people going into the corporate space as well, to learn how to position and present yourself, because opportunities don't come knocking to your doorstep. You have to go knocking on like thousands of doors before one opens to you, right? Has your view evolved on that at all? What was that for you?
If I consider myself to be a product, I think the most important part is go-to-market strategy. It's not like, hey, you want to build the best product in the world. Like nobody is Steve Jobs. But how you frame it and how you go to market is very important. And you always need trial and error to really understand what's going on, right? Like here is a framework that will follow, maybe conclude 2 or 3 steps. The third thing I think is to really just starting, just start to see what would work, what may not work. Like for example, if you're crafting a LinkedIn message, right? You can have 2 to 3 templates and pretty much just like copy and paste to all these people, maybe tailor just a little bit to see which template has the best response rate. And from there, if you identify, hey, like if I refer to their experience a little bit more, they have a better response rate, then in the future you should just do that. Just replicate the successful model. And so from there, you kind of understand like, hey, what are these people are thinking and things like that. And that really gives you like a framework internally, right? And in terms of, how to position yourself out there, I think just just like it's really just actively reach out. I wouldn't say there's any uh like special secret or anything. It really just trial and error for me. And like for example, when I'm trying to raise VC money recently, like I get 16 investor calls just through cold emails. And that's it. Cold LinkedIn message. There's no secret method. There's just like as long as you know how to sell yourself, like what's your value? Uh, what have you done before? What clubs have you attended to? What internships have you done? What establishment have you accomplished at school? Like try to frame it yourself so that they can relate, and also don't be like, hey, I can do this, but be like, hey, because I can do this, I can do something for you. Are you interested in the call? Like really think about like how you can serve them, because in a corporate environment it's like very transactional pretty much, like um but yeah, there's the transactional part of it, but also like the culture part of it, like for example, if I'm from Taiwan, like maybe like the guy I'm like I'm talking to, it's also from Taiwan too. So from there we can kind of be related in a cultural perspective. But other than that, if there's no this type of cultural connection or just interest connection in general, then you really need to think about how you can contribute in the sense that, hey, like I have this capability, I have this background, right? And so pretty much just like reach out to as many people as possible. Don't be afraid to fail, because I feel like one thing that students are afraid of is rejection. I really take rejection as, if I'm 20 no's away from a yes, and that yes can bring me $1 million, then why not, right? And if you really recognize that you have a value, then just do it. And I think the no's are just no's, right? For me right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in doing all this, you mentioned just at the beginning of your previous answer that you were considering yourself as a product when you're approaching this, in the sense of like this whole go-to-market strategy and distribution. And that stands out to me so much because this idea of distribution and building leverage is something that I've seen come up again and again in entrepreneurship, because people in it, not only are they excited by the idea of a business, they're also excited by what the founder and who that founder is as a person. And I've been noticing that you've been documenting your journey on social media about all this over the past couple of months, where you've talked about, your Silicon Valley offer getting pulled and applying for jobs and then starting SteraFlow. How and when did you decide that you needed to document this process, and what was like the motivation behind it?
I'd say I didn't know what to do at the moment, so I started social media. It's like everyone has that moment where, hey, like nothing really works out. Let me try to do something else, right? And social media was one of those things that I started. And yeah, documenting this journey is fun. I wish I can post more, but like things are hectic. But that's something that I really need to adjust because distribution is so important. But anyways, let's set that aside. I think the important thing about documenting this is, you take accountability of yourself too, right? You put yourself out there. When people look at you, they want to see what's happening, right? When people have that type of anticipation, I use that as a source of motivation and trying to keep myself out to center, right? But it can work for some people. It works for me, but it may not work for some people because sometimes people can get anxious when they have too much external pressure. And so, yeah, for me, I just find it to be a way for me to get audience. Uh, Gain audience as in like, hey, maybe I can find my next business partner. Maybe I can get investors getting interested in what I'm doing. Really sell my story and try to motivate people around me that maybe just need a little kick to do what they want to do, right? And yeah, that's pretty much my mindset behind this. Like I didn't really think that much in terms of, hey, I want to be the next Mr. Beast, or I need to be the next like productivity YouTuber or Instagrammer, etc. Right? I just want to be someone like could relate to people around me, and I'm just trying to do something that's a little bit different from what had been told by maybe our parents or our teachers, right? And maybe that can spark things differently.
And in your experience doing this social media stuff so far, has there been anything particular that stood out to you as unique about this medium of building an audience for distribution?
I'd say so far, to be frank, I don't think my social media channel helped my business that much because I'm a B2B product, while like my audience is mostly B2C on my social media channel, so there's no direct correlation. But I say, yeah, to reframe or just going back to what I said previously, I just want to be a platform where first of all it helped me take accountability of my actions. Second of all, just try to inspire people around me.
I want to go back to the supply chain management group at UofT because, again, when I view that in my head, it feels like building a platform as well as it's sort of part of your legacy at UofT, right? Because I still remember when I'd first talked to you about that club and you were telling me what your vision was and what you're trying to build and the community, and to hear about the club today and how well it's doing, how well it's grown, is kind of incredible. And it's essentially the biggest supply chain community at U of T, at least maybe in Ontario. But I can imagine that was a difficult process as well as like a major risk for you, because you're taking time out of your regular academic life, looking for jobs otherwise as well, in just building this community. How important was that experience, do you think? Was it a rewarding one as well?
Personally, I think building this community, it's just like a challenge that I take on for myself, where like I just want to find like-minded people around me. Not much. If I can help people find jobs, that's great. Like if people can find jobs in supply chain, that's like the vision too, right? Like make people understand about this field a little bit more. And personally, I'd say initially there must be a lot of challenges, no matter what where you're starting, right? There's like you need to be everything. You need to be the marketing guy, you need to be the finance guy, you need to be the operations guy, you need to be the sales, you need to be everything. And so from that experience, it just helped me to understand how I can lead a team, how I can make things run effectively. And for this club, I took a more of a autocratic approach because I want to execute more quickly. Because we are a small club, we don't have that much resources compared to any of the ramen commerce clubs. We need to find the right suppliers, not suppliers, sponsors. We need to find the right venues. We need to find the right schedule so that people want to come to our event, right? If we have a too democratic approach, things could get delayed for a month or two, and things may not even run out. And so that framework, I know that if you want to be a good founder, if you want to be a good sales before you hire people in, you need to be the sales yourself. And so for me, I took that approach. I understand how to sell this club, sell to sponsors, sell to schools, uh, and sell to professors or sell to speakers to come join in us, even to the audience too. Like I feel like that's something you have to figure out first before you delegate it to others. Because if you really rely on others to do the things that you didn't design for, then the whole vision could be collapsing and there's a lot of inefficiencies there. And so it just helped me to understand how to shape an idea to the end product. And that's like the biggest takeaway I had from my club experience.
From your LinkedIn, I saw that you were chosen as one of 67 founders from nearly 4,000 applicants to be a founder in residence at Antler. Given your, I guess, deep integration into this accelerator ecosystem within Canada itself, I wanted to get your thoughts on this thing I saw on Twitter a while back, where it was a VC accelerator program that was asking people to pay them a certain amount of money in either equity or cash just to be a part of the program itself. And I was curious to know, given what you know about the VC ecosystem within Canada itself, what are your thoughts on this? And what impact do you think this has on the ecosystem as a general and for founders?
Could you tell me a little bit more about what's the details on this particular server program? Like, you don't have to
Yeah,
mention the name. I just want to get more
yeah,
details on
yeah.
that.
So this accelerator program asked each company that was accepted to provide either 100K in equity or make a cash payment of 100K Canadian upon joining.
So they have to pay upfront to get into this program.
Yeah,
100K.
in either equity or just cash payment.
I think that's insane. Personally, that's crazy. I think that's not a really good deal, to be honest. So based on my experience at Answer, I'm giving out 10% of my equity for 150K cash. On paper it's 220K, but I need to pay a 70K fee because of all the services that provided to me, which they already mentioned. And so when I accepted, I already know. So I think that's fair. And but I think paying upfront it's not a really sustainable way because like why am I accepting your services and like you're an accelerator program, right? Like you should be helping me to help me success instead of me pay you to give me success, right? Like I can pay you equity, of course, like that's fine because but in exchange I need to have money too because the role of an investor is to help a company grow. Like essentially like a fundamental perspective from a VC perspective, right? Because what VC wants fundamentally is they want to see the next unicorn company. And by doing that, VC will have to leverage their own network to not only help them find the right clients or just give in technical assistance so that they can really, make the next unicorn, right? If the VCs doesn't have that capability, uh, you shouldn't be working with them. Why? Because money is a commodity. There's so many different VCs out there. There's so much money in the capital market, but like not that many good projects, right? So it's a distribution problem. Like like anything, like when it's rare, it becomes valuable, and money is just a commodity. So for any founders looking at VCs, they really need to think about like, hey, like what are their technical expertise of these venture partners that can help me with my business, right? Like for example, if I'm a supply chain platform, if I'm a supply chain related product, I should be looking into funds that actively invest into supply chain, or just like other B2B SaaS, or like they know how to sell things, right? So that they can give me guidance to really drive forward. So unless like this accelerator program can guarantee you a client and they're paying 100K a year so that you can earn back the 100K you paid out, like I wouldn't recommend anyone to join that, paying that much that upfront fee for nothing. Like if they want your equity, they should be paying money, because this is a fair exchange. You're giving out a part of your company for your success, and for me to achieve that success, I need resources from you, which is your money, and I can look for another VCs too. So yeah, so definitely a bad deal.
Yeah, see, I think of this as a chicken and egg problem because Canadian VCs in general, and this is something we've discussed again and again with all our previous guests as well. Canadian VCs in general are a lot more risk averse than ones in the US. And as a result, this is bad for founders because if no VC is willing to take that risk and give over that amount of cash to founders for them to build out their company, then there can be no like spillover effect where the founders end up becoming the VCs again, and the whole ecosystem suffers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point too. Canadian VCs are on average, they have a lower fund size. It's harder for them to raise money within Canada, because Canada, the most promising sectors are in energy, right? And the energy folks are, they last like 50, 60 years already in their industry, and so they're less likely to take major risks. Well, for the United States, the entire economy is driven by technology. You have your Amazon, you have your Metas, you have your Apples, right? Like the entire economy is driven by California itself. And so it's it is the culture that drives different way of perceiving risk, and especially in Canada, people are just in general less willing to take a risk, right? And so that's why a lot of Canadian founders want to raise money in United States instead of Canada. It's because they're just willing to write larger check size. Like in Canada, maybe I can get like the 200K Canadian for 10%, while I can get a $1 million in the United States USD. Which one would I pick? I definitely would go to United States. Like that's not something that, hey, I'm a Canadian, I should be settled for Canadian funds. No, that's not the mentality you should have for your business, right? So like people are more willing to place bigger bets in United States, and more founders are willing to go to United States for their capital too. So that's just like allocation problem.
And like Rudy mentioned, we've talked about this risk averseness leading to talent or brain drain from Canada or Toronto ad nauseum on this podcast and otherwise as well. But from a founder's perspective, do you think VCs have other things to contribute? Like I understand like the check size being the primary factor in consideration when you're making this decision, right? But it must change at some point or the other, because it has been going on for a significant amount of time that we're seeing talent going across to the United States and raising funds there, and then contributing to that economy or the culture. But what can change here as a young founder right now? Like what do you wish to see happen in the next, say, 5 years in terms of the culture or in terms of the processes in place with VCs and founders here in Toronto?
That's a really good question. I think as a founder, a Canadian founder especially, I wish I have more access to just like industry network. So if this VC can really help me to identify who I can sell to, like of course, like I need to know who my ICP is, but if I'm just like one call away with my VC venture partners, then that will be super easy for me too, right? And so I'd say in Canada, if they try to, increase the amount of projects within Canada, uh, they have to market a way to be like, hey, like you're a Canadian founder, we have this leverage, we have great connections with the government, and government is driving innovation. How can I help you in terms of, getting more deals, not only from the government but on the industry itself, right? Like I think the industry wise, the industry people will have to have the willingness to try new things too, like higher like risk-taking capabilities before before they can see the next unicorn essentially. I mean, there are a couple, but there's not enough because people are too risk averse and the industry is too saturated towards, like more traditional industries. And so fundamentally, I think it's hard. But if there's a way for these VCs to convince the founders to be like, hey, like in Canada, you have better support, not only financially, but also from network perspective, I can really help you scale out this business. Like if the government could back too, and that'd be great, right? Like that's something they will have to do something about it before it can really, take place.
So, sticking with this like forward-looking theme, I guess now that you're done with this accelerator program, I'm more curious to know what's next for SteraFlow and also to learn a bit more about your co-founder and the dynamic you guys have and why or how that works. So, yeah, what's next for SteraFlow?
Yeah. So in terms of our next steps, we try to reach out to more potential clients. And currently, we had a pilot program that's running with the potential client too. So we just want to see like what are their some other features they want to include and some other things that they're more care about, so that we can really finalize the product before we do the actual launch to everyone. And pretty much we're at that stage. Before we're looking at fundraising, but so far we want to hammer down on product a little bit more before we fundraise, and more traction. Better traction is the better VCs you can get and things like that. They just want VCs in general just want to see traction. How big is the future market size? Who are we working with, etc. And so that's something we want to get before we really do our fundraising round. And in terms of my co-founder, we actually met at Verkada, so the company I work for in Silicon Valley. And when we are there, we're facing this supply chain work every single day, right? Like we understand how hands-on, like how complicated it could be because of so many manual process they have to do. You need to copy and paste things from Excel. You have to pull from legacy ERP systems, which is your Oracles, your IBMs, oh not IBMs, SAPs, and like things can be, quite complicated sometimes because the UI is not as intuitive as you want to be. And so from there, the reason why we started SteraFlow is because we just want to tackle on that, specifically on the communication process and helping sourcing managers to do their work better. And our dynamic has been great because we were working on it while I was still in school, right? It was my last year of at UofT, and then we're just working on it after my internship. And so from there, we're just working remotely. And yeah, before we have pivoted 3 times. Like before this, I was working on a warehouse warehouse software, warehouse operating software, because same as supply chain softwares, most of the warehousing softwares are quite legacy type, and so like there's some potentials to innovate there. But like for us, we didn't continue with that is because I didn't have that much of a network in that particular field, so selling becomes a little bit hard. and like the detail that I can really tap into is also limited because I didn't have that kind of background, so that pivoted. The second one we were working on was a SQL IDE SQL editor. So we wanted to make like an AI SQL editor, and we realized that's easily replaceable. So we just like scraped that out. And third one was our supply chain agent idea, which is SteraFlow. And that idea actually came out while we tried to refine the idea during my time at Antler. And yeah, so that's pretty much the dynamic. Like I'd say like me and my co-founder Ayan, we are both um, very driven on this particular project. He graduated from UC Berkeley. He has a major in data science and economics. And so for me, coming from a business background, I think it's just like a match because he has a understanding of economics as well as the technical aspect of building a product too, because he has software engineering experience. And so that's pretty much how we, get together and build on SteraFlow.
Yeah, a big part of startup culture is just, in addition to finding a good idea, is having the right people alongside you when you're building on it. Was it just the fact that you guys had complementary skill sets, or was it something else that convinced you that this was the right partnership to have and maintain going forward?
Yeah, I think for me and Ayan, we both want the same thing, which is, just achieve financial freedom, right? And given we have different skill sets, it really seems to be a right, at the time I just feel like, hey, do you want to start a business? I'd be like, hell, oh sure, I would just start a business, but didn't really think that much. Yeah, and we were just trying to sow something that we experience personally, and I think a lot of people will benefit from. That's the whole idea. I didn't have that too big of a, like things in my mind where if I want to start the idea with them or not, it just like seems to be a right way to go at the time. And at that time, like I didn't have much to do, right? Like I'm finishing my internship, I'll be starting recruiting if I want to go for work for corporate. At the meantime, like I'm making maybe work on a side project too, right? And I just feel like, hey, maybe you can start something like this. But we didn't know that, hey, we'll get into Entler because of this. And so it just becomes, there's just upward trend taking there. And so yeah, pretty much that's what happened.
So another thing that I'm curious about is that I've read on through your LinkedIn when you talk about SteraFlow is conducting like 60 plus interviews with potential users and working on making the product perfect for them. So and trying to build AI imbued tech which works because it is built keeping the people who will be using it in mind. How important was that learning process of iterating on the product itself, not just the idea, but how it communicates or translates to your users? What was that iterative process like where you might not necessarily second guess something, but after a user points out another detail to you, you're like, rethinking your process or rethinking something that you just assumed. So I'm curious to learn more about how you got through that iterative process of building.
So pretty much from these interviews, what you're trying to identify is your pain points. And you can, if you like in a user interview, like if you're starting a project, you want to identify pain points, talk to as many people as possible in terms of your um, the use case that you're trying to put into, right? So maybe I want to solve for a supply chain problem, then I need to talk to 50 supply chain people. If they identify something that's in common and you think that you can be addressed, that's something you really want to hammer down. Everything outside of that, it's a novelty. And so what I've done is we built a product. We call it MVP, right? Minimum viable product. Your podcast, and it's not an MVP. Um, Pretty much what you're trying to do is you give it to them, show it to them to see if that works. What are the things they think they will be using, they will not be using. You take all that feedback, to go back to your computer, iterate another version, launch it to them, let them try, and just get back and forth. To be honest, like there's not much things to think about, but what you're trying to identify is the least amount of features that you can achieve the maximum outcome. So you don't want to overwhelm users with 10 features while they only use one of them, right? And you can do that through tracking too. Like you can track the user in terms of where they click, which page they're on, what tools they're using on our app, and trying to identify what are the most important tools that these people are using and iterate from there. And so I personally, I just think it as like a science project where you have a hypothesis. This hypothesis, you want to prove it right or prove it wrong. If it's wrong, then you go back, rechange your hypothesis, just iterate from there. Like at a startup point, really just do the things that doesn't scale. That's pretty much the mindset.
And how do you go about building this hypothesis in the first place? Because you mentioned previously that you knew nothing about supply chain initially, right? And then another thing I've heard online is that, well, I say online, but like, within the entrepreneurship space, is that people often don't know what they want, in the sense that they might not know that something is a pain point until you figure that out for them and make it clear to them, give them an alternative. And for that, you need contextual knowledge about a particular field or a particular industry. But given that you didn't know much about supply chain initially, how did you approach this identification of pain point for them?
When I say I didn't have that much of a experience initially, that's when I didn't have the internship experience at companies. But once I think I cumulatively, uh, you know, just joining internships, taking roles, doing projects for these companies, I kind of can see the patterns that these supply chain managers are experiencing. And mostly, since supply chain is such there's a lot of manual work that's entailed in this particular role. Like for example, to talk to your suppliers, even sometimes you have to talk to your customers too. Like what is the best way for them to achieve this goal at the moment is mostly through emails, Excel, and things like that nature, right? And so, is there a way for me to replace that process or just complementing that process to make the process faster? That's something I would want to know because that's for my own sake, right? That's for my own sake of the job that I'm dealing with, not only in the future but also what I have at the time, maybe at Ricotta or maybe at Nestle. And so just build something that people will want when just if you can think yourself as a user or like people who work there, that's great because like you have first-hand experience, you know the pain point, and you try to create a hypothesis there because like that hypothesis should be relatively true because you work there, you know things already. And so I think if you're building something, especially building an MVP, you want to consider yourself as a user too. Like, would you personally want to use this product? Because if you don't use it, then who else is gonna use it, right? You can't sell something that you don't want. That's hard, and unless you're like super talented, but that's not mostly the case.
And from my own personal experiences, which have largely been only on the corporate side of things, I think you and Rudy might have a better, I guess, insight into what the differences are like. But I'm curious to know, for you, what has the main difference been like seeing the corporate side of the same industry and now um, seeing the supply chain industry through a very different lens from as a founder? Has it been a jarring experience? Is it something you expected with the perspective shift? What has that been like?
Like coming from corporate to being a startup founder, like is there any mindset shift?
Yeah, because I hear it a lot when, say, typically in consulting roles or, say, banking roles, a lot of people go over to the client side of things, and all of a sudden they're operating in the same sandbox, but the tools they're playing with are very different, and the people they're playing with are very different. So I'm curious to know, going from the corporate side to the startup side as a founder, all of a sudden the scale might be very different, so your perspective might shift. I'm just curious to know, did that happen for you, and what was that shift like?
For me, it doesn't change that much because when I was at corporate, I shouldn't say it doesn't change that much because like the mindset is totally different. But I'd say like work itself is not much because like during an internship, you're given projects, and even you're starting a startup, you're also given projects too, right? So you're just like trying to build the best product with the given amount of time that you have. The problem is if you're working at corporate or if you're working at internship, there's a framework that you can follow. Well, for startups, there's no framework. Like you have to be your own boss. You have to know what is the best move for your company. And while if you're a corporate, like your manager can be able to tell you like, hey, you just have to do this for me, or maybe you can come up with something that kind of works towards this use case. Like the direction is clear. While if you're working for your own startup, there's no direction. Like maybe like one day you think it's a great idea, next day you realize, oh, there's tons of competitors that's out there. You can't really compete. That may be a bad idea. You just have to reiterate it again. And so like the biggest pain point for me as a founder is that I have a direction now to follow, but since like the the entire technology landscape it's so competitive in the space that I'm currently working on, you really need to identify what's your moat, right? Like technology, I'd say, is not a moat anymore because people can easily, if you're a SaaS product, right? You can easily create something through Cursor, through Lovable, and things like that. Like for the use case that you're trying to do, unless you're a data company or you're like a deep tech company, that's something it's irreplaceable. But you're just if you're just building a platform or marketplace, like people can just like come in and build a marketplace and do something about it. And so like what becomes more important is the selling part of things. Like if you're a founder, you need to understand how to be a good salesman, how to craft the right message for clients to be like, hey, if I hear this name, I know what pain points you're trying to solve. I know what exact problem set that I can just like use my platform to relieve my pain essentially. And while at work, you don't you're just building things that your boss is trying to tell you to do. Although you're still taking ownership of that, it's just like the mindset is different because the risk taking for a corporate is the company, while the risk taking for a startup founder is themselves and also the company, right? And if you're a startup, you don't have that much time because your runway is limited. This is not just like your capital that you have put in, but also like your time, like how you can personally finance yourself in working on this particular product. Like not a lot of people can be backed by their parents or like if their friends and family. Sometimes they have to start something on their own and how are sustaining and living from that too, right? So I say if you're a founder, you're mostly a survivor. You're trying to survive. You don't have to grasp everything. But if you're in corporate, you have more comfort, and sometimes you can even make better decisions too because you're not driving because of fear. While sometimes as a founder, you're driven because of fear, and that's sometimes could be hard. But if you're a founder, you have the greater risk, the greater upsides too, right? So this is just something that any founder would experience and any founder would have to, uh, just take. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is like what you talked about being a certain kind of person essentially to me seems like at the end of the day, no matter how much efficiency we can squeeze out of automating processes through AI, and we can see big tech firms downsizing and like there's no tomorrow, it still convinces me that, the human capital and the people involved in the process are going to be the moat at the end of the day. Like you said, you have to sell it right, right? And I think people are a big part of that going forward. Which brings me to an important segment that we do with all of our guests because we want to get to know you and our founders on a personal side and get to know about, who you are as a person outside of the work you're doing. And we call these rapid fire questions, but that's largely a misnomer. They take time, so you can take time, think about it, and we'll edit it like you got them in a jiffy. So I'll fire us off here.
Cool.
What is your go-to comfort meal after a long work day?
Beef noodle soup.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, great choice.
Yeah, I can't say I don't eat beef, but I'll take your word for it. Um,
Oh, that's great.
would you rather spend a day at a cabin in the woods coding by yourself, or building on or working on your business by yourself, or biking through the woods?
I came through the woods because I haven't done that for a while.
Yeah, you did you used to compete for a while? You were quite serious into biking, right?
Yeah, I was a triathlete.
Oh, That's sick. I signed up Rudy and myself for the Toronto Marathon in October, so we've just started
Oh,
training for that.
oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. Let's see. Okay. What is the most random thing you've ever built just for fun? This could, not be work related at all, but what's the most random thing you've built?
I build a lot of things with purpose, but most random thing I built. Okay, this is not random, but like I built this. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain. So uh, like how should we go about it? Because it's not going to be rapid fire from there.
Go for it. Explain as long as you want.
Okay, okay, sure. So I was like thinking about this idea where in Chinese culture, there's a maternity nanny type of thing. Like
Okay.
once like once they give birth to a child, like they will hire this maternity nanny and they cook great food and take care of their children every single day. And like I have a friend who actually experienced that issue. Like she wanted to look for a maternity nanny, but it's kind of hard from, it's like the market is super competitive and people are paying big bucks. And so like how can I find those that have availability? And so I just tried to build a website about it, but it's like half built.
Oh wow. That is purposeful, I must say, but still, I did not see that coming.
Okay, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, one on one, who would it be?
So many great minds that I want to talk to. Um, I don't know, Elon Musk. That's like the longest period of time and like the most basic answer, but hope that's not hope that's
That
like
that's
not too
an that's
bad.
an interesting choice.
I'm sure it would be a very interesting conversation.
That's true. Okay, what is your guilty pleasure tech tool or gadget or app that you just can't live without?
Tech tools and gadgets I can live without. ChatGPT every day.
Oh, yep, topical.
Um, on a similar note, what is one app or tool that you think is totally underrated that more people should be using?
Oh, that's underrated. Cursor.
Have you
Not a
have
lot
you
of people
tried
know about
have you
Cursor.
tried Windsurf?
Windsurf, no. No, I know they got acquired by the OpenAI, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Haven't
I think
tried
it's
it out,
like
but I will.
either 3 billion or 9 billion is one of those. Somewhere in the
It's
billions,
crazy.
one of them.
It's a lot of
It's
billions in
crazy.
between there, by the way.
Exactly.
Okay, if you could instantly master one skill overnight, what would it be?
Photographic memory.
Oh wow, yeah. That pretty much covers most skills afterwards then. That's
Exactly.
smart.
Great
Exactly.
answer. If you could go back and give advice to yourself when you were just starting your career, what would you say?
Read more.
I love that. I think it's the best thing you can do with your time. But
Exactly.
this might yeah.
Just
Okay,
read
if
more.
your life was a movie, what would it be titled?
Purpose.
Poignant. I like it.
Interesting answer. Okay, final question, probably the most important rapid fire question. Cats or dogs?
100% cats.
Cats?
Yes.
Wow. I think I knew this because you do have a cat, right? Or you used to have a cat?
I had three cats, but they're all dead now, so that's sad.
But you still love cats on a positive
I
note.
still love cats. Exactly. Exactly. You can, you know.
And with that, we come to the conclusion of this episode. Thank you for coming on, Anderson.
This is a
Thank you guys so much.
great note to end this on.
Before we end this episode, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for anybody listening?
Oh wow. Well, I don't think I'm at the stage where I can give out great advice, but I would say just do it and learn as much as possible.
Yeah, not sponsored
Oh
by
yeah.
Nike.
Not sponsored by Nike. I wish,
I
maybe one
wish.
day. I wish.
But yeah, thank you for coming on. Great episode.
Thank you.